In The Equalizer 3, Dakota Fanning plays experienced, confident CIA agent Emma Collins, but the actress grew up right before audiences' eyes, including sharing the screen with Denzel himself nearly 20 years ago. It is a rare performer who can graduate gracefully from child star to more grown-up roles, but Dakota Fanning has made it look easy. In the early 2000s, she played a slew of precocious child characters. After numerous TV appearances and a role in 2001's I Am Sam, Fanning stepped up big for her one scene in Sweet Home Alabama. The 2002 romantic comedy stars Reese Witherspoon as Melanie. Fanning appears as young Melanie in a film opening flashback that reveals the heart of Witherspoon's character. As an adult, Melanie has moved on from her southern roots as a fashion designer in New York. But when her boyfriend proposes, she has to go back to Alabama and obtain a divorce from her estranged husband, Jake. The flashback with Fanning shows that Jake and Melanie were soulmates from the very beginning, as they kissed for the first time. By the end of the film, the two decide to stay married to each other. In 2003, Fanning went from brief scenes to the whole movie in the comedy Uptown Girls. The film follows rock star princess Molly Gunn, played by Brittany Murphy, as she learns that her fortune has been embezzled. She resorts to nannying for a girl who is just as lost as she is. Fanning's Ray is an obsessive 8-year-old who copes with her father's illness and her mother's neglect by acting like an adult. Though Ray clashes with the childish Molly, the two learn that they have more in common than they think. Both have been abandoned by their parents in their own ways and need support that they have never gotten. Ray learns to have more fun, while Molly learns responsibility. Both come to appreciate a friendship that changes them both. Fanning recalled her experience filming with the late Murphy fondly on an episode of Watch What Happens Live.
She just taught me to always have fun. She was such a ray of light.
Just like Ray, Fanning showed a talent far beyond her years in the film, as she proved to be effective in both comedic and dramatic scenes. An adaptation of the 1980 novel of the same name, 2004's Man on Fire marked the first time Dakota Fanning and Denzel Washington appeared on screen together. The film follows ex-CIA operative John Creasy, played by Washington, whose alcoholism has turned him into a shell. A chance at redemption arrives when he accepts a position as a bodyguard for Fanning's character, 9-year-old Lupita Peter Ramos. In spite of himself, Creasy develops a bond with her, arguably stronger than the one she shares with her father, an expatriate named Samuel. Concerns over Peter's safety are confirmed when kidnappers grab her in the street. What starts as Creasy's reluctance to connect with the young girl turns into a fierce paternal love for her. Creasy does anything he can to get her back, far more than Samuel, who turns out to be behind the kidnapping plot. Creasy ultimately gets Peter home safely, but at the expense of his own life. As Creasy succumbs to his wounds in their final moments together, he finally admits his fatherly affection for her. This connection is evident throughout the movie, and even carried into their next film together, The Equalizer 3. Antoine Fuqua, the director of all the Equalizer films, told comicbook.com, "You know, when Dakota said she was interested, I thought, oh yeah, this is Man on Fire, but years later, and this is what he's doing." As opposed to the cuddlier aliens of his films E.T. and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Spielberg made the aliens highly destructive when he adapted the H.G. Wells novel War of the Worlds in 2005. This was Dakota Fanning's second team-up with Spielberg, after her appearance in his criminally underrated generational alien miniseries Taken. Tom Cruise stars as a father who was having a pretty tough time before the aliens attacked. Already on the outs with his son, Robbie, and daughter Rachel, played by Fanning, he has to ensure they survive the end of the world. The film was one of Fanning's first blockbusters, and she holds the experience in high regard. She told Collider,
"Huge films like that don't come along very often, and they're very special, and I'm so grateful to have them in my memories."
Like the source material, War of the Worlds ends on a positive note. Cruise's Ray finds a way to bond with his children and ensures they make it safely to his ex-wife. The film had real-world positive effects too. It catapulted Fanning into household stardom. Stephenie Meyer's Twilight vampire romance novel series took the world by storm, and it had a short road to adaptation on the big screen. In Twilight, Bella and Edward's tortured romance starts in a small town in Washington. By the second film, New Moon, the story is spanning continents when Bella has to save Edward's life. In a most dramatic fashion, Edward chooses to end his life by exposing himself as a vampire. Luckily, Bella arrives just in time to save him and meet the infamous Volturi. The ruling class of vampires include Dakota Fanning's Jane, a vampire who has the handy ability to inflict pain with just a glance. She remains a lurking threat in many of the movies until the final installment, when the Volturi decide to wage war on the Cullens. Breaking Dawn Part 2 demonstrates just how serious she is in one integral flashback when she throws an immortal child onto a bonfire. Jane is just one of the endlessly entertaining elements that add to the campy nature of the series, and Fanning clearly had a blast bringing it to life. The year was 1975, and while plenty of acts had pushed the envelope in music, one thing rock hadn't had was a band with a lineup of all women. Enter Joan Jett, a talented musician intent on creating an exclusively female rock band. These are the true events that became the source material for the 2010 film The Runaways. Twilight co-stars Kristen Stewart and Dakota Fanning appear as bandmates Joan Jett and Cherie Curry, respectively. After Joan enlists manager Kim Fowley to help with the band's creation, they find 15-year-old Cherie, who jumps at the chance to front the Runaways. The band becomes a sensation at home and abroad, but it comes at a cost. Young and naive, Cherie is taken advantage of by an industry that just wants to use her up. Dressed specifically to appear as a colloquial term jailbait, Cherie soon becomes addicted to drugs. The band does not survive their inner turmoil and ultimately falls apart. But the effect the Runaways had on the industry cannot be undervalued. Joan Jett became a solo icon in her own right, and the band paved the way for many musicians to come. Fanning and Stewart's on-screen chemistry made for a memorable film that was ultimately about the relationship between its two stars, and told their story well.
I could see that there was something more behind her eyes that she had to tell.
Following the success of The Runaways, Dakota Fanning began appearing in a string of independent films by acclaimed directors. She collaborated with filmmaker Kelly Reichardt in 2013's festival darling Night Moves, and soon worked with Ewan McGregor on his directorial debut, 2016's American Pastoral. Based on John Romano's Pulitzer-winning novel of the same name, McGregor's first film failed to capture the acclaim and clout that the book received. Even so, Fanning emerged as one of the film's major standouts. The actress plays a stuttering teenager named Mary, whose life turns upside down after she commits an act of terrorism. As the film continues, audiences witness one of Fanning's most complex and nuanced performances to date. In an interview with Tribute, Fanning opened up about what drew her to this very complex role, saying, "I think why I wanted to do it is simply because roles like this don't come along very often." Fanning further explained that some aspects of the character made her nervous. Specifically, she was hesitant about the scenes involving her character's stutter. She said, "I think having the stutter made me nervous and the later scenes are kind of weird." Yet Fanning said that the experience of making the film was very positive overall. American Pastoral may not have been a critical darling, but it has since emerged as one of Fanning's most interesting and nuanced performances. Dakota Fanning continued her streak of indie films, appearing in director Ben Lewin's Please Stand By in 2018. The coming-of-age flick stars Fanning as Wendy, an autistic woman who is obsessed with Star Trek. Wendy's life takes a dramatic turn when she decides to submit a Star Trek spec script to Paramount, a choice that helps her see the world in a different light. A love letter to sci-fi, Please Stand By received considerable praise for Fanning's powerful performance. Time magazine critic Stephanie Zacharek described seeing Wendy interact with the world around her as a pleasurable relief. Zacharek made a point to congratulate Fanning for adding complexity to Wendy, writing, "She plays Wendy as a person and not a condition." Lewin also had nothing but nice things to say about his star. He explained to Collider that Fanning diligently immersed herself in the role, even learning the Klingon language to round out Wendy's love for Star Trek. Lewin said Fanning embodied Wendy from the moment production started. As for what compelled Lewin to cast Fanning in the first place, he said, "Every film I've seen her in, her face is a mystery. It really does feel like something otherworldly. Her abilities as an actor are just awesome." Quentin Tarantino had already made one movie that revised history for the better, Inglourious Basterds. So why not two? His 2019 film Once Upon a Time in Hollywood depicts the culture surrounding the Manson family's crimes of the 1960s. The director weaves a fairy tale where the Manson family gets what they deserve at the end of a flamethrower, while rising star Sharon Tate is saved from her tragic real-life fate. Other elements are fictionalized as well, including a close look at the cult members living at Spahn Ranch. Rick Dalton's best friend and driver, Cliff Booth, arrives at the ranch, concerned that his old acquaintance, George Spahn, is being taken advantage of by the Manson family. One such member is a real-life figure, Squeaky Fromm, played by Dakota Fanning.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize the two of you were so close.
The real-life Fromm was not involved in the killing of Sharon Tate, though she was sent to prison for her role in a plot to assassinate President Gerald Ford. Tarantino's version only appears in a brief scene, but Fanning is mesmerizing as the imposing figure who continues to challenge Cliff at every turn. The film certainly implies Squeaky is up to no good, though we never see her again. Dakota Fanning is best known for her film work, but that shouldn't discount her roles on the small screen. This includes her recent work in TNT's The Alienist. Based on a book by Caleb Carr, Daniel Bruhl's character, Dr. Laszlo Kreisler, sets out to solve a series of murders in the late 19th century. The title refers to Kreisler, who is close to what is considered a psychiatrist in modern days. He uses his knowledge of psychology or alienism to understand the serial killer and bring them to justice. Kreisler enlists the help of John Moore, played by Luke Evans, a cartoonist for The New Yorker, and Fanning Sarah Howard, one of the first women to work at the police department. Sarah is perhaps the most modern of them all, initially brushing off Moore's advances, more interested in solving the killings. The series was airing on a cable network at a time when streaming shows tended to generate far more buzz, so it's a bit of an underrated diamond in the rough. Its 2 seasons depict a fascinating psychological tale with passionate and talented actors to back it up.